Hi, everyone. Here's my disclaimer. The information you hear in this interview may not represent those of the station or the host. Please consult your primary care physician for any advice about your own health care. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio, where our mantra is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. Folks, I say this all the time. I have phenomenal guests, and I have a phenomenal guest today. I'm really excited because, number one, she's a New Yorker, and I'm from New Jersey. so we're kind of close that way. I have with me today Laurette Foggini. Is that Foggini, or how do you pronounce your last name, Laurette?
You did it right, Foggini.
I did right? Uh-huh. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. She is author of this, I love this book, The Song in Lola's Heart, a story of caregiving for ages 6 to 76. And we're going to discuss the book. The illustrations are so beautiful, and it's illustrated by Michelle Shan, right? Shane. I was at the first time.
Yeah.
Shane. Okay. It's early, folks. I didn't have coffee yet. And Laurette has worked in the in-home care industry for the past 14 years, managing the process of hiring, placing, and managing caregivers in a support team. Laurette is a bicoastal caregiver for her mom and took time off to give her brother, her hero brother, Andrew, a break. Laurette has had a personal experience of walking the walk about elder care. And Laurette's she's working on a second book, which I can't wait to read, about the real-life caregiver, her superhero brother, Andrew. And you'll have to come on my show about that book, Laurette. You ready? You're welcome to come back.
I will. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. So, Laurette, welcome to Chatting with Betsy, and really excited to be talking to you about your book. And, folks, I have to say this. I do really love the books that I get from the authors. And, Laurette, I'm going to ask you what I ask every author is, what motivated you to write this book?
Great question. So I, as I said, as you introduced me, I've been working in the caregiving industry for a long time now. And when COVID hit, we had, as a team, we're trying to think of ways to give back to the professional caregivers that we had. It was so hard for them to go out in a time where it was really scary and still care for our patients. And I was on a bike ride one day, and I was climbing up a hill, and I always try to distract myself when I'm going uphill because it's painful. And I was thinking of this story in my head, which eventually became The Song in Lola's Heart. And I got to the bottom of the hill with a friend of mine, Louise, who can be a little critical. And I told her the story, and she said, "Oh, I love it." So I came home and I wrote it. And then the biggest challenge, though, was finding someone that could put pictures behind my words that, for me, resonated. And I miraculously found an old classmate on Facebook, Michelle Shane, who is a wonderful illustrator and a graphic designer, and I sent her the book. And she also has some similarities to the character, and she loved it. And so we worked on it together. So that's kind of how it, and I dedicated it to caregivers, the professional caregivers that were working, caring for our clients. So that's how it came about.
I think the illustrations, and I'm by no means a book critic, but the illustrations, but I did work in a preschool. The illustrations are absolutely wonderful. The story is great. And, folks, I was talking to Laurette before I started to record, and I'm going to tell you, the audience, how I feel about this book. I think it is so brave, and I give Laurette a lot of credit. Kudos to you, Laurette. Not only did she write a children's book, you're welcome, which there really, I don't think there's a lot of children's books dealing with families who have someone with dementia. But you wrote a book that is not your traditional family. It kind of goes against the grain with some people. It is diversified. This is a lesbian couple. She has 2 moms. She has 2 stepbrothers. The second mom is African American, so it looks in the picture. And the grandma is Jewish, comes from Russia. I love that because my grandma came from Russia and I'm Jewish. Mm-hmm. And I just think that this book is so needed. You know, like you said you lived in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. I think this would sell like hotcakes, especially in the LGBTQT, I think I got that, plus community. This is a book that's definitely sorely needed. I'm curious as to why you had a book and you were very diverse with it, which I can't brag enough in your honor of how I think that's so cool.
Oh, thank you. Well, I mean, I was raised by very parents who really emphasized how important it was to accept other people. My mother was married my father, and she was really the first one old, and you know they didn't marry outside of most of all of her siblings, she was one of 5, married Italian Catholics. And when my mother brought home this man, my father, who was not Catholic, not Italian, and Jewish, and had been married before and had a child, it was a bit of a scandal. And I think that really formed our acceptance, because my mother had to really fight to say, I'm marrying the person I love and I don't care what faith he is. So for me, it's just always been really important, the whole concept of acceptance, and not everyone looks the same and not everyone is in the same type of a marriage. And then, of course, spending the last 20-plus years in San Francisco, we do have a lot of families with 2 moms or 2 dads, and I just, it's accepted in San Francisco, but it's not accepted in a lot of places, and I just thought it would be important to see that in the context of what happens when you have someone you love has dementia and you have to accept it. So it's a lot of the theme of the book is about acceptance in all areas, not just dementia, but, everything, what families look like and how you identify. Yes. So.
Yes, I agree, and yes, I think it's awesome, and I could actually relate to your parents' story, because I remember when the first cousin in my family got married, she married an Italian guy. That was scandalous back in the 70s, because we're Jewish, and I was brought up, you stick to your own kind, you marry your own kind. However. In my family, we didn't. I married, Matt was German, Irish, and my sister married a Filipino guy, and my brother married someone who wasn't Jewish. So, my family, it got very diversified through the years. And, you have to accept. And, I say this all the time, Laurette, when I have interviewed people that are in the LGBTQ plus community, that I tell the audience, you don't have to agree or like someone's lifestyle, but it doesn't give anyone the right to belittle somebody or to bully somebody because of it. And I think that this book really hits home with, like you said, acceptance and understanding what the grandma is experiencing with dementia and how caring that's another thing I have to bring out, how caring the little girl is, Lola.
Mm-hmm.
And folks, I know for a fact, because I saw it with my own son, children can learn valuable life lessons by being a caregiver, as we the parents role model for them. But they can learn lessons, caring, compassion, empathy. And I think this book also brought that out.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting. I think some of what people ask me, like, what motivated you to write this, in addition to wanting to give back to caregivers, but I think some of it comes also from what I saw with my grandparents and how isolated seniors can be when they start to lose their hearing or their memory. And we came from a very large family. This is my Sicilian grandmother. And she was usually, we had large gatherings, and people would kind of leave her alone. You know, she would be the lady dressed in black in the corner. And I started to really grow closer to her at that time because I realized how, rich of a life she had, and I started spending a lot more time with her at those events. And I just, realized that if we had all just accepted that there were changes, but she was still there, and just the need to connect and all the connections. I mean, I remember having her listen to Grateful Dead, which was, the music that I listened to back then. And it was wonderful because she liked it. I don't think I ever expected that, but by really slowing it down, and I think that's what happens when, we're going so fast, and sometimes as people get older, they can't keep up, so they're left, they're ignored. And I just would slow down, and Grateful Dead is kind of a perfect, type of music to slow down to. And we listened to it, and we shared something together that I never knew I could share with my grandmother. So it really taught me a good life lesson. I was much older than Lola at the time, but it just taught me that it's, to slow down, to meet people in their space, just like Lola did when her grandmother is now, no longer speaking English, and she learns to connect with her, spoiler alert, through Russian. So yeah, it did bring me back to that experience.
Yes, that's what I also remember. Like my own grandmother, she spoke English to me, but she would speak Yiddish to my mom. My mom never spoke Yiddish back. I could never figure that out. Like I say to my mother, how can you never learn to speak it? Because the preschool that I worked in, these children spoke their parents' native tongue, their mother language.
Yeah.
And but they're taught that at home to speak the language. My mother wasn't encouraged to speak back in Yiddish. And when my grandmother got older, I wouldn't say she had dementia, but she would forget that she was talking to me, and she would speak to me in Yiddish, and I would say, Grandma, I'm not Harriet. You have to speak to me in English. And then she would remember. But a lot of times in families, especially, I guess, when I was growing up, you tended to, I don't want to say forget, but as kids, you don't have the patience sometimes, or even as a teenager, to sit with someone. But I used to take my son Josh to visit my grandmother when she lived in her apartment, and then when she went to a nursing home, and he loved visiting his great grandma, and to hear the stories. I love to hear my grandmother's stories about coming over, and I find that especially during the pandemic, people got a taste of that isolation, Laurette, and even abandonment in a way, because they weren't abandoned purposely because we couldn't visit. But I talked about this way before the pandemic, that caregivers and their loved ones are abandoned, and they do feel isolated. And now the world got a taste of it, and they don't like it. And so I hope they keep that in mind when they decide, I'm not going to talk to them because they have dementia, or they don't know who I am anyway, so why should I visit or talk to them? folks, I'm going to tell, I'm going to just say this straight from the heart because that's how I talk. And I'm a Jersey girl. People, people know love. I said this years ago, and I'm standing by it. Dementia, I don't care what kind you have, cannot rob the heart of love. It can rob your brain of memories, does not rob the heart of love. Your relatives with dementia, they know love, they feel love, they know your voice. They may not recognize you. They know your voice. They hear it. Hearing's the last sense to go if they're not hearing impaired. They know, and everyone needs physical touch. Everybody wants to be communicated with. Mm-hmm. And this book, to me, brings this out.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I'm going to give you a little spoiler alert for the next one. So, and I totally agree. And my mother, she has memory loss, and we always joke. Someone comes in the house, and she looks at them, and she goes, I know you, and whether she knows them or not. But it brings with a big smile, and people just love it. And she loves, I say to the people, she may not remember your name, but she remembers she loves you. But one of the things my mother always did and still does is, and the second book is about this, she would squeeze our hands 3 times, and 3 times meant I love you, and a 4th time meant I love you too. And I know that until the day, she passes, that will be something, a language that no matter what, she will always be able to communicate in. When she was recently in the hospital and she was very much out of it, they had to intubate her, and they were taking her off the breathing tubes, and we squeezed her hand 3 times, and she couldn't communicate. I don't even know if she knew she was there, and she squeezed our hands 4 times back. So I think you're absolutely right. No matter what, the heart knows what the heart knows, and it knows love, and it knows touch. And it may not know names, and it may not remember dates, but it knows those things.
Yes, definitely. When my mother-in-law, Matt's mom, she had Alzheimer's, and she had to be placed. And when we would visit her, her face lit up like the 4th of July when she saw Josh. She knew him. Her heart knew him. May not remember the name, but she would smile, and her face would brighten. And that's even like 20 years ago, folks. I realized that dementia cannot rob the brain. Not rob the heart. It does rob the brain. It cannot rob the heart of love. I saw it with Matt, my husband. He would call me, after a while, he started calling me Betsy, and he called me Booby. But but he knew that Booby was his wife. And yet he called Josh. Isn't the brain baffles me? It really does. He knew Josh's name right to the end. It's amazing, and I hope you do write more children's books. And
this other one I just met with I just met with the illustrator Michelle Shane, my childhood friend, and so we're doing it. So. I'm looking forward to it. And what I think is exceptional about your book, Laurette, is that you have in the back of your book organizations and websites for caregivers. I thought that was terrific. Thank you.
That you put that in there.
Well, we all need support. We need a lot of support, and as you said, it can be very isolating. And I've kind of taken a little bit to social media just to share some of what we're going through here with my mom, and because it is it's a whole other world, and you learn new traits and qualities that you need to stay connected because you're not in the mix anymore, So it's interesting. It's a great experience. It's heartwarming, as you know from your journey with Matt. You've taken it to share with others after he passed. It's a very different, and it can be a lonely world. So you have to work hard to stay connected, to stay healthy, to stay, doing the things that you love to do. And thank God now that we have, online. I love to exercise, and so I get up and I do my online classes, and it makes me a better caregiver during the day. So.
Yes. I've talked about self-care and how important that is, and I know people say, well, I don't have, time to go to a spa or the money, and that's not just doing that, folks. Self-care is Laurette's exercising at home. It's taking care of you, the person, and really taking care of your heart, your soul. We have to recharge our batteries because if, as the saying goes, you can't serve from an empty cup, an empty vessel. And, folks, right. I know firsthand how difficult it is to find that time and that balance, or to even want to go, walk around the mall or take a walk, and then you feel guilty because you're not with your loved one. And it's getting that balance. I found it difficult. But we shouldn't feel guilty, because we do need to recharge our batteries, because when we're cranky and full of stress and anxiety, it rubs off on our loved one, and they feel that, and they don't want that. They don't want us to feel that way.
Yeah, they already feel bad enough, if they're aware of what's going on, they feel bad. My mom feels bad that I'm sometimes. And I said, Mom, it's a treat. I mean, for me, it's such a blessing that you're letting me even do it. So thank you. But you have to do things. My yoga class was split into 3 different sections because Mom needed help in between. So does it look exactly the same? No, but I still got to, I just kept reminding myself, I'm still getting the yoga class in. It's just, extended. It's in phases.
Yes. Yes. Learn to adjust. We have to constantly readjust our, schedule. And I really learned to just go with the flow of things and not be so rigid.
Yes, well said. Well said.
I'm a bit of a control freak, I guess, and I never realized that. And to be very organized. I also worked as a nurse, so I used to having to organize yourself. And it comes to a point where I couldn't do everything for Matt in the morning. He couldn't tolerate brushing the teeth and shaving and showering. I had to break it up. And that's okay. You got to go with the flow of your person, too. And I wanted to ask you, Laurette, because you worked in the home care industry, is your, for lack of a better word, I'm going to say attitude, but is your attitude different now with, if you went back into doing home care, now as you're taking care of your mom than before you were taking care of your mom, before you were a caregiver?
Oh, gosh, yes. I mean, I've been saying the last couple weeks, I learned more in 14 weeks than I did in 14 years. I think, walking it, I mean, I knew the world of home care and family caregiving, but very long distance. My father was, ill, and I wasn't really here. But being here on a day-to-day basis, you learn so many things. And it's not just about, I've learned about toileting and showering and hands-on things, but all the things that affect families. Is there a living will? Where is it? Do you know what it says? I mean, even down to what it says. I hadn't read it until I had to read it. Do you have authorization with all of her, where she has her accounts? Do you really know what you want? I mean, just tons and tons of things that come up as you're caring for someone towards the end of their life. So it really has given me a much more expansive perspective of what family caregivers go through and are going to go through. And I keep saying to my brother, what if, and this happens so many times, right? What if Mom didn't have the two of us? I mean, we're so fortunate because we're both here right now. And my brother kicks me out of the house when he sees him going a little stir crazy and vice versa. But there's so many people out there that don't have it. Or I couldn't do this 2 years ago. I couldn't do that. I had other commitments. So, and that's where geriatric care management comes in, right? You hire a geriatric care manager who becomes your representative if you can afford it because it's pricey. But just taught me that I was dealing with one segment of the elder care journey, hiring and managing the caregivers, but there's so much more involved that families have to do and go through, and it can become quite overwhelming at times. So it's nice to have, I had my background, so I was able to quickly navigate a game plan and also be flexible, but also, I knew some of the questions to ask, but I've just learned so much more actually doing it. And sharing it with other people because, as I share, I realize that we don't know what to do. We don't know what we don't know until we don't know it, right? I don't know if that's the actual expression, but it's definitely what I've learned and felt. I came into this thinking, well, I know everything. I've been doing this for 14 years. Of course I know what to do. And it was a rude awakening because it was, I learned, oh, no, there's so much more. So many more nuances and know and understand. And one of the things I just shared recently in LinkedIn was about what my brother calls the H word, hospice. And I used to banter that word around like it was nothing. Oh, yeah, this family's going on hospice. Don't call 911. They're on hospice. Such a big emotional step to take for families. And I think you had said something also on a post about it. It's not an easy one. So it's having the compassion for other people by feeling it myself, by being in that situation. And it's really taught me a lot. It's taught me to be much more humble and learn a lot more about my craft, really, because it's come back to home.
Yes, I have heard from people who were in the home care industry, and then when they were a caregiver, then they really understood. And people don't understand unless they have gone through that experience. And you brought up great points, Laurette. I wish that I had hired someone, a geriatric care consultant, to help me with the hospice process, to pick at a hospice. I tell people all the time, please learn from my mistakes so you don't make the same ones. Don't wait till you're at the end of your rope. You could always get a consultation. You could always refuse, say, I'm not ready for it. But if you just want to get an evaluation for hospice, just have to ask your doctor, and you could get one, and they'll tell you, if your person qualifies or not. And, brought up like living will. That is so important to make your wishes known for your of what you want, and people don't want to talk about that, but it needs to be talked about. End of life. What do you want your end of life to look like? Pre-planning your funeral. Do you want a funeral service? Do you want a memorial service? Do you want to be cremated, buried, or alternate burial site? These are things that people don't want to think about, but you have to think about it. And power of attorney, medical, financial, and make it clear what you want so that siblings don't fight over it. Because that's when you get into fights of, no, Mom wanted this. No, she told me she wanted that. And then if it's written down, then there's no question about it.
Yeah.
I do have
and it
to
has
say
to be
this.
early. It really has to be early.
Yes.
Not
yes.
at the end, because it's too scary at the end.
Right. I mean, as soon as someone's diagnosed, I highly recommend that. And don't even wait for that.
Yeah, even before, even when you're perfectly healthy.
Yes.
Make those decisions.
Yes, I highly recommend from the age of 18, your child, whether they go off to college or not, your 18-year-old is now an adult, and they should have a living will, power of attorney, medical, financial. It could always be changed. They get married or have a partner. It could always be changed. But if your child doesn't have that, then you as the parent don't have a say because they are an adult. And the hospital doesn't even have to tell you anything. They don't even have to tell you that they're there. And I got power of attorney, and I had my son do that at the age of 36 because I wanted it done, but then the pandemic happened, and I couldn't get to a lawyer till afterwards when they were starting to open back up. But I highly recommend that. Excuse me. And I also want to recommend when you have the living will, really read it and save yourself the stress and anxiety. I happen to be shredding papers now, and I saw Matt's living will, which I carried out his wishes. But I felt guilty, which I shouldn't have, and caregivers do have that unjustified guilt. I felt guilty of giving him medicine to calm him down, which then made him kind of a zombie. And then when he was admitted to the hospice unit in the hospital, he had to be heavily medicated because he was so severely agitated. And I felt that was I killing him? This is how what was going through my head. And then when I looked at that living will, it said that he wanted medications to ease his comfort, even if it might hasten his death. How I wished I would have really read that, Laurette. It would have saved me so much stress, undue stress, undue anxiety. So please, folks, take my word for it. Please read your loved one's living will. So, I read it. Not that I didn't read it, Laurette. I read it. But you know how you could read something, it doesn't even sink in, and then you read it, and then it hits you like a sledgehammer. And that's what happened.
No, absolutely. It saved us. I mean, it saved my brother and I when we had to make the decision. I mean, it was a little bit of a conflict between, and then we read it. I said, look, this is what Mom wanted. So, so it really is, it's an important document. It helps.
Yes. Very important to really read it. And if I would have read it over and over again, I would have realized that I was carrying out Matt's wishes and I was not killing him. But, we always second-guess ourselves. And I used to think, I won't feel guilty about anything. I did my best. But you know what? I know in my case, and I know other caregivers, I do run a support group, they feel guilty. Caregivers have, I don't know, I call it unjustified guilt, because no matter what you do or don't do, as long as you're not being abusive or neglectful, they're going to die, unfortunately, from this disease. That's the fact. And, people think, well, if I should have done this, I could have, would have, should have, it drives you nuts. And carrying that unjustified guilt is just a drain. It's an emotional drainer. And I have to learn to let go of it. And I finally learned to let go of that. But it's hard. It is. It's difficult.
And have you noticed that everyone has an opinion?
Yes.
Everyone has an opinion of what you should or could do that's not in the same boat. I do value opinions, but I know it's coming from a good place, but I have never heard so many opinions from people of what you should do. So, there's that outside influence of, oh, my gosh, I'm already dealing with my own guilt, right? And now you have to throw it on me. You shouldn't give this medication, or you shouldn't do, it goes on and on. Not professional opinions, just personal, personal
Yes,
opinions.
Can you please share, I love this, folks. I saw it on Laurette's LinkedIn page, the story of your mom with the pudding, because that is just so precious to me.
So my mom has congestive heart failure. So one of the things they say is low salt diet. They're also advising not too much caffeine, so not too much chocolate. So for several months, we were really trying to, no, Mom, you can only have, one pudding. You can only have 1 cup of hot cocoa. And when we decided we didn't want her going back to the hospital, we just said, and this is where a curse word would come in, Betsy, but I'm not going to use it.
Okay.
Said, you know what? Forget it. Let's just give her everything she wants. So my brother and I, when we made that decision, we went out, we bought $60 worth of pudding, which I didn't know you could spend $60 on pudding. But the funny thing is it only lasted maybe 36 hours. It wasn't even a couple of days. And so on my LinkedIn post is a picture of her holding a pudding. And she just loves it, and we are really enjoying giving her what she wants. When the cardiologist told me the last time, no, you got to cut down the pudding, I looked at her and said, really? I said, okay, forget it. Because it's making her happy, and we want her to be happy and comfortable, and we don't want to sit here and scold.
Yes, and that's what's important.
Yeah,
yes, I
representing her pudding.
Yes, I really like that. And that reminded me, as I told you earlier, of Matt, because I gave Matt pudding, and I don't know, for some reason, those with dementia crave sweets. I know my mother-in-law did.
Yeah.
She loved her crumb buns, and she loved her ice cream. I used to bring her ice cream, and Matt loved, well, he always loved the sweets, but he really loved his sweets. And you know what? Why not give them what they want? It's comfort. Let them eat the pudding, especially at the point where they are. I mean, really, what difference does it make? People might get upset with me for saying that, but you know what? When people are at the end of their life, why can't they have what they want?
Yeah.
Why
so
not?
Now I never forget the pudding. I go to the store, I always get the pudding.
Yeah,
and it makes her happy.
I love that story. Well, I could tell you the way food prices are, pudding a package must be about $5 or $6 now. So I could see you spending that much.
Yeah, we go to the dollar store though. We have found the dollar store in town, and they sell the pudding. So it's a little cheaper, but who cares?
Yeah, Laurette, I really enjoyed talking to you today.
Thank you.
You're welcome, about your book, and I wish you the best, and I would love for you to come on when you have your other book published. You know where you can contact me, and I'll have you back on, because I would love to read about your superhero in your book, your next book. And Laurette, where can people purchase your book, The Song in Lola's Heart?
So it is available on Amazon, and you can look up either my name, Laurette Foggini, or you can just look up The Song in Lola's Heart, and it's right there for $9.99. And usually Amazon ships really quickly. So that's the easiest way to get it.
And if people wanted to connect with you, where could they connect with you if you want people to connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. It's all under Laurette Foggini. I have a website that's coming out. It is caregiversuperhero.com, but that's in the works. So any of those social media sites, you can find me, and I love to talk to people and share my experiences and reach out.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Laurette Foggini, everybody, The Song in Lola's Heart, a story of caregiving for ages 6 through 76. I love the book. I think it should be in actually preschools and kindergarten. I know some schools probably won't allow it, but I think that they should. And I just think that people should buy this book and read it. It's a great great book. It's a great story. I like the poem, "A Tree Stands by the Road," at the end. This is a very moving book. It's a children's book, but you know what? It's great for adults too. And reading is very important. Put your child, your grandchild, your niece, your nephew on your lap and read to them. It's very beneficial for both of you. And I want to thank you, Laurette, for coming on Chatting with Betsy. Folks, please share this show to help other people. That's why I have Chatting with Betsy, is to help other people. And to subscribe to Chatting with Betsy is for free. I'm on Spreaker and iHeart. You can hear my show on PassionateWorldTalkRadio.com. And let your friends know about Chatting with Betsy, because I have phenomenal guests and that are very resourceful, that can help you live a better life and give you information, such as this book, The Song in Lola's Heart. In the back of this book has websites for organizations. That was so thoughtful, Laurette. That was really phenomenal for you to do. That's wonderful. I do, folks, that get very excited, because you know what, when you're a caregiver and you don't know about resources, and a lot of people don't, I know I didn't when I first started, it's important. It's important to have resources, and that's what Chatting with Betsy does, is to provide resources. And I want to thank everyone for listening, and please purchase the book, because it's a great book. And that's my opinion. And I just want to say, read the blog, which Jeannie White, our station manager, writes and produces the show. So thank you, Jeannie. We'll have information about Laurette and how you could contact her and where you could purchase the book. And I want to thank Lillian Caldwell, CEO of Passion World Talk Radio, who makes this all possible. Folks, as I always say at the end of the show, in a world where you could be anything, please be kind and shine your light bright, because if we were all kind and shined our light bright, this would be a much happier world and a brighter world. So let's just do that. And yes, I am a child of the 60s and 70s, and I believe in love and peace and being kind to each other. This is Betsy Wurzel. You're a host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio. Till we chat again, everyone, take care. Bye-bye now.